Here are the answers to your vocabulary instructional activities match. Each of these activities can be done in the classroom to enhance a student's understanding of new vocabulary. I will give an explanation of each match and give you more details about it. Our first instructional activity is called a word poster. A word poster is where children choose a word and write it in the middle of a poster, and then they draw or color pictures to illustrate the word. Also, on a word poster, we ask boys and girls to use the word in a sentence, and this is a way that we can visualize the meaning of words. Sometimes the sentence also relates directly to a clue we want to remember in the new definition of our vocabulary word. In our word poster example, you can see a variety of word posters put together to make a quilt, and this quilt is of all the words in a unit that they've been studying in their classroom. You can see the picture in the middle, you can see the word done near the top, and then you can see the sentence at the bottom. I like that their sentences are helping them remember the meaning of the word. Our next instructional activity is a word sort. Word sorts can be done open or closed, and this is something that I've done with you several times over the course of the semester. Now, in an open word sort, we give boys and girls many new vocabulary words, but we do not give them categories, and they have to figure out how the words are sorted. In a closed word sort, we give boys and girls many words, and we give them headlines of categories, and they have to sort the word into the category. We've done this for phonemic awareness, we've done this for different instructional activities, we've done sorts throughout the semester, even on graphic organizers. It's a great way before you do a reading activity or before you introduce a new concept to give them the information that they will need to listen for and also determine if they have understanding of that word. You can see the example is used for math vocabulary, and they're taking the words at the bottom and they're sorting them into the categories above. And this would be an example of a closed word sort. The next instructional activity for vocabulary is called a concept circle. And if you think back, we used concept circles when we were learning about phonics. And I gave you 4 different phonics sounds, and then you had to determine which one did not belong. That is like the concept circle on the right, where one term does not belong. You can also use concept circles to put many like things in a circle, and the boys and girls would have to fill in one more vocabulary word for that circle, just like our middle concept circle here. Or you can create concept circles of similar vocabulary, and the boys and girls would have to name the circle. So you can see this example is all the things are solid figures. So there's 3 different ways to use concept circles. And remember, you don't always have to have a circle to have a concept circle. You can put it in a square, you can put it in a graphic, but it's the ability to take a certain amount of vocabulary words and either name them, fill in one more, or find out what does not belong. It's a fun game-like way to play with our vocabulary words. A predictogram is where we give boys and girls vocabulary words that are coming in a new concept or story, and we ask them to predict the category that these words belong in before you hear the story. So this is a before reading activity. So for the sheet that you see in front of you, maybe we'd pull out 10 words from the story, and they would predict which words would be setting, which words would be characters, which words would pertain to the problem, the action, the resolution, or do not belong in those categories. You can also do this with nonfiction, but our categories would change. Maybe, it would be, these are, I'm trying to think of a concept. Let's say we're learning about pumpkins. Maybe it would be parts of a pumpkin, uses for a pumpkin, and let's see, parts of a pumpkin, uses of a pumpkin, activities to do with pumpkins. And you might have 10 terms and they have to predict, well, I think that's the name of a part of a pumpkin, or I think that's a use for a pumpkin. And it's similar to a sort because you're giving them we're giving them categories, but they're predicting meaning for that vocabulary word before they use it or hear it in the context of the story. It's a fun activity. It does not have to be done on a worksheet like you see here. A lot of times I'll have the words on cards, on a pocket chart, or on a smart board, and we'll move them and manipulate them. And I like that a lot better than actually writing it down on a worksheet type basis like you see here. A word map is basically a graphic organizer for one word. So you may have a new word each week. You may have several word maps you work on in the course of a story. They might be individualized, where students are making their own word maps when they're reading independently. But in a word map, you graphically design information for the reader to remember what the new word means. So you can see on this graphic organizer, and this is just one of many, you put the word in the middle, and this asks for your definition, the dictionary definition, an association that you make when you see the word or think of the word, a clue, and then a picture. Now, some of these word maps also look at antonyms or synonyms. There's many different adaptations that if you hit Google and put in word map, you'll see lots of organizers. You may want to find the one that you like best on Pinterest and pin that to your pin board for the week. A word chain is where children choose a word and they put that would be at the top of the organizer or the top of their chain, and then they identify other words that they can use to connect to the chain. For example, in this activity, we've given the boys and girls beautify, environment, recycle, reduce, reuse, pollution. And they have to figure out the order that these words go to make the most meaning. And then you can do a relationship sentence once you've put them in order. So they would say, in order to beautify our world, we need to take care of our environment by recycling, reducing waste, reusing materials, and eliminating pollution. Now, I typically don't use a word chain on a graphic organizer like this. I like to actually make a paper chain. So I give the boys and girls sentence strips, and I have words on them, and I actually ask them to glue them in a chain, and then in small groups we'll come up with that sentence together for our chain. So it's a lot more fun. You can also make necklaces where you glue the words in a sequence on a necklace, but it's basically giving them a group of 5 or 6 unknown vocabulary words and having them figure out the association between those words and how they go together. The dramatization of words is a kinesthetic activity for boys and girls to remember new vocabulary. Now, I had to show you a picture for this matching activity, but typically when you dramatize a word, it's not on paper. So I have the word smacking, which was from a book, and the boys and girls would come up with a way to dramatize that word, so they give each other high fives. Maybe our word was pollution, and so several boys and girls would act out what it would mean to pollute. You can think of lots of examples. This works well when you're choosing words that are verbs or things that can be dramatized. There are some words this definitely will not work for. But for your kinesthetic learner or for your young learners, this is a fun way to get involved. And I've even made videos or taken photographs of them dramatizing their words, and we've made posters from those. A knowledge rating scale would be done pre-reading or pre-introduction to a skill with new vocabulary words, and it allows the boys and girls to think about the words that they will encounter, and it allows you as the teacher to begin to do some assessment of their prior knowledge. We have done a knowledge rating scale when we went to the storm board, and it was the storm board where you had 6 different blocks, and I asked you to give me a rating of 1, 2, or 3 on each of the words. And that gave me some background knowledge on who knew the words before I taught them, who had heard of them, and who had never heard of them. So here we see a knowledge rating scale. The vocabulary words go down the side of the page, and we're rating them 1 through 4. 1 being I've never heard of the word, and number 2 is I've heard of it, and I could probably figure out if I've given hints. Number 3 is I know the meaning of the word and can understand it. And number 4 is I know the word so well I could explain it to someone. And this is something you could give boys and girls a paper and have them do this, but only if you have 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders that are proficient readers. Because remember, these words are new. A way that you can do this in the classroom would be thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down, and do an oral activity. Or to make it more kinesthetic, you would hold up and say a word, and they would move to different parts in the classroom depending on their rating. So maybe move to the front of the classroom if you'd rated a 1, move to the middle of the classroom if you rated a 2, and move to the back of the classroom if you rated a 3. However many numbers you want. But it's a way to get the boys and girls moving, get them tuned into some new words, and you as the teacher get a picture of what they know. And then you can revisit those words at the end. Exclusion Brainstorm is also another vocabulary strategy that you've done over the course of this semester. It's where I give you a list of words and you figure out which words do not belong. And we did that just, 2 weeks ago when it came to comprehension, and I gave you lots of areas of comprehension and you had to figure out what was not an area of comprehension. And we also did it before that for phonemic awareness. And so it's a good way to get boys and girls thinking about what they know. So you do it before you read or before you introduce a concept with new vocabulary words. So you can see in this example, we have words that definitely don't belong. I see right away pizza, and maybe jacket, and maybe some other words in there that don't quite belong in the story Becoming Butterflies. But it's a great way to activate their prior knowledge. And then when you read the story, I always do what they call shoot the V. When I teach vocabulary, I do something before we read, then I read the book, and while I'm reading, the boys and girls are listening. And when they hear one of our vocabulary words, they raise their hand in the air and they make a V at the top with their fingers. And that tells me that they've heard a vocabulary word. We can stop or we can talk about it at the end, but it gets them tuned into those words that otherwise they might just skip over because they don't know what they mean. So let's just skip it. Exclusion brainstorms and other words that activate their knowledge about what's coming, get them tuned in. So at the end, you can really check their meaning on the words. Unlike the majority of the activities that I've shared on this matching video, the semantic feature analysis is definitely something you're not going to do pre-reading. This is an after-reading activity, and it's a way where you can organize the new vocabulary and new concepts graphically for boys and girls. And this is where you create a grid with a list of words on the left and then characteristics across the top. And then boys and girls have to figure out which words belong under which feature. It can be done many different ways. Here you can see it with math vocabulary and looking at some of the words across the top that are also vocabulary terms. So we have our shapes and our terms, and we have to see which shapes fall in which category. This is not something you want to do with kindergartners or even first graders without a lot of support, unless you have something that's really simple. So on the left-hand side, you might have words that belong with that pumpkin unit. And around the top, you might have things that we eat from pumpkins, uses for pumpkins, weight of pumpkins, whatever it is. And then they would mark the categories in a more simple way. Looking at this semantic feature analysis of math can be quite tricky if you're not familiar with all the terms. And that's true of any semantic feature analysis. You want to make sure that when you give the boys and girls the activity that they'll be successful and you can truly assess what they've learned. Just a reminder that good vocabulary activities have 3 things. 1, they're done before, during, and after reading a new concept or new story. Number 2, they need to be fun and active so the children remember them. And last, they're in the context of something meaningful. They definitely won't be just a plain old vocabulary program like we used to do in those vocab books. Have fun!